Okay, there we go. That's a little behind the scenes action for everybody that you missed, Ashley. Okay, everybody.
Yeah.
Hi, we're here again today with another guest, but first we're going to begin with a quote like we always do. The path that leadeth, sorry guys, I don't know my contacts. And the path that leadeth on is lighted by one fire, the light of daring burning in the heart. The more one dares, the more he shall obtain. And that's by Helena Blavatsky. Hello,
So,
Ashley. How are you?
hi. I'm doing really, really well. I love this. I feel like, when someone is passionate about something, you can almost say like their heart is on fire. They're just, and that literally then lights the way of what their path should be. It motivates you to grow more and more and go further and further into whatever it is that you're trying to do. And the more you dare to do something, the more you, I feel like, get in return, either experiences or whatever it is you're trying to manifest or get out of your life. So those are my thoughts there on the quote. But I want to introduce our guest and get her thoughts. Her name is Sheila, and she is living right now from the UK. We'll get into who Sheila is right after we talk about our quote. And normally I kind of always bring things back to it. But hi, Sheila. Thank you so much for being here.
You're very welcome. It's lovely to be here.
And so, do you have any thoughts on that quote? Does it resonate at all with you?
It does resonate with me, yeah, and it's all about the heart, isn't it? And it's so funny because I do a lot of work with the heart as well. That's something that I'm very
Mhm.
passionate about. So yeah, it's all about the heart. It's all about it, having that soul purpose as well. I feel is really
I think that
important.
there's this misconception a lot of times that people who lead or live with, like, by being led by their heart are almost weaker as opposed to
Mm,
like leading by your brain. And
mm,
I think it's the exact opposite, because there's this in like this connectivity you have to other people, where if you lead by your heart, then you're going to connect better with people. A brain, yes, it's a miraculous kind of organ, but the heart is as well. And just like you can't live without a brain, you can't live without a heart.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
I think
Brandon, do you have
that's,
any thoughts?
what's that?
I said, do you have any thoughts?
Oh, yeah, I do. But before I get into them, I just want to say I think it's very synchronistic, Sheila, that you do work with the heart, because that's something that a few of the guests that we've had on recently and another friend of mine said about where I have to focus my work and my attention. That's actually something Michelle just said when we did that the Reiki sessions that we talked about in the last episode.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's really I love how this is unfolding for us, because we just started having guests this year, because we did the podcast for over a year and then we took a hiatus and we got it going again, and we started having guests also. So we do one episode where it's about a card, where it's just me and Ashley and Giz, and then we do one a week with a guest. And it seems that the way this is unfolding, it's like a path that's just meant for me to be. Like, it's where I need to be. I meet the person next. It's just really
Mm.
crazy. I just wanted to say that.
It's
And
like they're all getting different layers of you. I feel
yeah,
like it's such, I totally agree with you. It's like it's meant to be. All the people that have come on so far, they just they've added so much to my life. And Sheila, we both got Reiki sessions, Brandon and I, this past week, talked about it on one of our podcasts. And, one of the things that she told me was that my heart chakra was really blocked.
Mm. Interesting, yeah.
Um,
Interesting.
yeah. And I think I wasn't surprised by that. And I don't think Brandon, when I told him that, was surprised by that. All right. So let's get into kind of finding out all about Sheila here. So Sheila, I found her, I posted in some Facebook groups about wanting to get people on the podcast. And just for our listeners, if you'd love to be on the podcast, I'd love to connect with you. We are not looking for anyone who always does tarot and reads tarot. You can just be someone that's interested or listens and wants to come and have a conversation. But Sheila said that she'd be interested. And so we kind of figured out a time. And, again, I'm so thankful that she's here, because she's living literally in a different continent. So, she took the time out of her day. So Sheila, why don't you just kind of give an introduction of who you are? And, I kind of like saying that I want to know the who, the what, the why, and the how.
Okay. So I am an intuitive business alchemist. That's what I call myself. And I help purpose-driven professionals and female entrepreneurs who feel blocked in some way. And I help them heal those energetic blocks, any blocks that are holding them back from embracing their true gifts. So helping them to, you know, open up their intuition so that they can create the businesses that they want. And the more women that we have out here or out there that are living from their soul purpose and creating businesses that help change other people's lives, the better. And that is my mission, to get women to create these businesses that give them freedom as well as joy and fulfillment. So that is my passion. And my background is very, very interesting. I'm actually an ex-police officer.
Okay.
And private investigator.
Ooh, that sounds so interesting.
Yeah, and I've always been intuitive. So I've been intuitive since childhood,
Hmm.
and I have been connecting with people that have crossed over. I used to speak to my uncle who had crossed over when I was a little girl and didn't really understand it at that point. And then, you know, as you do, as you grow up, you kind of close
Hmm.
everything off. And then it opened up again when I had a really, really difficult, abusive relationship, basically. And then everything opened up again. And I was in corporate for a very long time. And then I really, you know, going back to the heart again, my heart and soul was in serving others and helping other people. And so I decided to try and join the police force. Unfortunately, there used to be a height limit on getting into the police, and it was 5'4" for a woman. Okay,
Okay.
and I'm 5'1", so I had no hope of ever getting in. And then because of discrimination, the Discrimination Act that came in, they had to get rid of that height limit.
Hmm.
So I was able to apply and I actually got in. I was quite late in life. I was about 38 when I got in, but it was something that had been my passion and I absolutely loved it. I loved my job in the police, but I burnt out. It was so, so hard, so difficult.
Hmm.
Um, I worked with victims of serious sexual crime and it was just so, so,
Whoa.
yeah, so difficult. A lot of trauma, all the time. And I burnt out twice within that job. I came out for a little while, had a bit of a career break,
Hmm.
and went back into corporate for a while. Didn't really float my boat. I'd always kind of like done the my intuitive stuff in the background as well. So I was always running my business in the background, but never kind of like jumped in
Hmm.
feet first really. I always had the safety of that corporate or the career.
Right.
Um, and then I went back into the police after a career break, and it broke me again. Within 18 months, I'd burnt out again because it was just so intense. And
Mm.
so I transitioned out into private investigation, which I thought, well, that's a good transition. And I used my intuition in that, you know, finding people, chasing
Oh
people.
yeah.
It was a lot of fun, but it's also quite boring. You know, you kind of like
Mhm.
think of all the exciting things like car chases, and yeah, I
Yeah.
did chase a lot of people, find out what they were up to and stuff. But you also, you know, you've got that waiting, sitting around waiting for someone to come out of
Hmm.
their house. You could be there 8 hours,
Yep.
you know, so it could be quite boring. But there was something just missing in that, and I wasn't fulfilling my purpose, I didn't feel,
Hmm.
with that particular role. And so I went back into corporate for a little while and got made redundant. And that was the boot for me. You know, I was like booted up the backside, if you like, by
Hmm.
spirit. Get out and do it. It's your time now. So I had no choice. And I fully immersed myself in my business. And yeah, I mean, I do readings, I do coaching, and I'm living my best life now. I absolutely love it. I wouldn't change it for the world now.
I have so many questions. So first, let's
Cool.
talk about what you're currently doing. So
Okay.
the the coaching business aspect, is it a specific type of person that you work with? Like, or are they all kind of varied in terms of the type of businesses that they have?
So they will normally have a spiritual business or want a spiritual business. So they could be tarot readers, they could be healers.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be some kind of spiritual aspect to it, or they're on a mission to change people's lives. So they want to help people in a bigger way.
Yes.
That's where my heart is. It's like, serving the community, serving humanity,
Mm-hmm.
um, and creating change in the world. So change makers would be the people that I want to work with. Yeah.
I love that. That's I just recently started my own business. I'm doing social media management, and I literally just said to Brandon yesterday that I really wanted to kind of dive into the spiritual realm,
Mm.
because I feel like social media is something that everyone has to do in terms of marketing their business.
Yeah.
But for people like you, and I don't know what your thoughts are on kind of social media, but I feel as though those people want to just do their job and they don't want to get bogged down by the other part, which is the posting and the content and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And so, I totally hear you about that. And, I feel like when you're working in that community, you feed off of each other's energy and vibes and stuff like that. And so I think there's more of a connection there than going into something that's a little bit, maybe more like mainstream. But let me ask about this police work because I think that's so interesting. I can't even imagine going into something in that area and not getting burnt out. So did you have like a partner that you always, I'm going based up, my knowledge in this is solely based on Law and Order SVU. So really that's kind of the only experience I have. But like, did you have like a partner? Are there a big turnaround rate there in being in that kind of work?
No, we didn't have specific partners. So you would go when you're on shift, which is response. So, the cops that go out and
Mm-hmm.
deal with everything on the day-to-day basis. You don't have the same person you are crewed with. So you get crewed with different people um, every day,
Mm-hmm.
basically. So you could be with anybody. So that way you get to know everyone in your
Mm-hmm.
team. Um, a lot of the time you are out on your own. So, I mean, and that's quite dangerous.
Yeah,
The world
that
is a
sounds
dangerous
scary.
place. Um, and this is another reason that I needed to I left because it was just getting too dangerous. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of the time I was single crewed on my own, and I had a back injury as well through wearing, if you imagine like wearing a stab vest, the
Yep.
big body armor. I'm 5'1", and it was like pulling my body forward, and I had a back injury, and so I would go out on my own to eh, do like interviews and stuff with people, when I was a response officer, and it was dangerous. You
Mm-hmm.
don't know what you're walking into, um, and that was another one of the other reasons that I left as well as the burnout. But it was so there'd be times where I'd be petrified. I'd
Yeah.
be so scared, you know,
Mm-hmm.
especially at night.
Oh my gosh, yes. And so did you feel as though you could like channel your own gifts and intuition in that job?
Yeah, I kept a lot of it hidden from
Mm-hmm.
my crewmates, um, but I would use specific energies, um, for example, to keep myself safe. So if I knew I was going into a really dangerous situation with a colleague, I would ask for protection, I would ask for help, I would call on all the beings that I knew were available to me
Mm-hmm.
to help me and protect me. And I never got into any harm. We were always safe. Um, so I would use that there. I would also use my intuition in interviews. I would get a feel if I
Mm-hmm.
knew that they were lying or not. So I would use my intuition there. And when I was working with the victims of serious sexual crime, I would also Reiki the room. So, because we had to do medical examinations, with the
Hmm.
doctor.
Right.
So I would make sure that I would, Reiki that room so that it was the best place for them, calm, and made them feel safe.
Right.
So I would use my gifts within that job. Yeah.
That's awesome. I don't even like I don't even know if I understand what Reiki a room means.
So, when that there are a number of levels of Reiki. So,
Okay.
Reiki level one, where you can do it on yourself. So, you put your hands on yourself. Reiki level two gives you the ability to send Reiki to places, send it into the past, send it into the future, using symbols. So, I would literally put symbols around the room
Mm-hmm.
to create that safe space for the people that were coming into um, to give evidence or have medicals, etc.
That's such a new realm for me that I'm like, okay, I again love learning and I'm so excited to now I'm like, okay, Reiki room. That makes me feel though as though that's something I think I should be doing moving forward, right? Because then it makes it more of a creative space, more of an open space, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm like saying right as though I know, which I do not. But okay, so you said that after your second time, your second stint in the police, you went then and you got this like a message or something that told you you needed to start your own business. Like, was it a voice? Was it like signs kept coming up, or how did that work?
So I'd always had my business kind of like running in the background. I'd had that
Mhm.
for many, many years, but it was just, a hobby business. I wasn't making it, my full-time living. I wasn't marketing it. It was just something that I did for fun. So it was always there in the background.
Mhm.
Um, but then the universe conspired, if you like, to kind of like get me out. I had the back injury.
Mhm.
I couldn't do my job anymore, and I so I kind of like transitioned to, oh, what's the easiest way to transition? Okay, private investigation. So I transitioned there, but that wasn't it. That's not what spirit wanted me to do.
Right.
And so that didn't work out for me. And so because a lot of the times we want that safety, don't we? We want to feel
Yes.
safe. So we go back to what we know, the
Yes.
corporate career, the money, the stability, security.
Yes.
But then spirit are going to say, no, 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 that's not going to happen.
Mhm.
Out you go. And that was a redundancy, and that was it. I had no choice at that point. It was, and lockdown, we were kind of like, we had lockdown as well.
Right.
So yeah, it was okay. I have to make this work now. This has got to be my full-time income, and it has become that now.
Have you found that kind of when you made that decision, jumped into doing your own business, that kind of all the cards kind of fell in place?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then it was like this was my time. This is what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm finding success.
And
yeah.
to jump in really quick, it's kind of like for me, it was the total opposite. I just had a venture late recently where I tried to go off into the world to use some of my old skills to make money. And it's not that I had a bad experience, but it's just like these little obstacles just kept falling in my way. And at first I thought it was just like, oh, I just have to remain, keeping my center and just go through this. And then after a while, it's like, maybe this is just the wrong way. And then once I turned around, shroom, it all lined up. I was like, okay, I get
Yeah,
it now,
yeah,
yeah. But I wouldn't have
absolutely.
known unless I went that way. So
Yeah, yeah. You have to kind of like go down that path and down that route, don't you, to find out.
yeah, exactly.
So let's get into kind of what exactly you do. So you said that you when you were younger could speak to your deceased uncle. Do you still speak to spirits?
I speak to spirits, yeah. So when I'm working, I will work with my guides, I will work with my clients' guides, I will work with ascended masters, angels, whoever wants to come and join, I will work with them. So Yeah, I'm channeling all the time. So I'm what's called claircognizant, which means all the information just comes into my head and then I speak it. And I will speak very quickly when I'm channeling as well. So, I'll be doing a reading for someone, the words will just come in and I will
Yep.
just speak it. And I won't remember. It will just be, da, 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 it all comes out.
Oh my gosh. So I'm reading this book, Ask and It Is Given, and it seems very similar to the way that
Yeah,
she
yeah.
worked with Abraham.
Abraham,
Um,
that's absolutely right. Yeah, yeah.
okay. So that's so awesome. And I mean, you said that you work with your clients' guides. Do they know that they have guides? And I'm going off my own personal desperate want of having a guide and knowing what it is. Um, because
I love you, Ashley. You're great.
so do they know like or you're just saying, no, this is your guide?
A lot of the time they don't know
Okay.
that they have guides, but I would just giving them information. They don't need to know specifically where that information comes from,
Okay.
but I am just, this is what I'm getting and this is what I'm going to be saying to you. So a lot of the time they don't know. They come to me for, sometimes they'll come for just a reading and I'll do intuitive readings with them and it will just be, they'll get what they need at that time.
I'm okay, super interested now. So what kind of materials do you use when so you can do like a card reading, and I've already talked to you, said you use oracle cards and tarot cards. Do
Yep.
you use any other kind of I don't know what to call them besides saying like props, but I don't know if that's like the right word.
Divinary tools.
Yeah.
Divination tools. Yeah.
Divination. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I
my
like props
main
though. We should use that for the podcast, but I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sheila.
yeah, so I use tarot is my main tool
Hmm.
for connecting in. It's just a tool, just helps me connect in. And oracle cards as well, but sometimes I will use a pendulum just to get quick yes or no answers or to check something myself. Those are the main things that I will use. A lot of the time, it's just my own intuition as well. So I am just literally channeling
Hmm.
whatever needs to come through. I mean, the tarot will just be a prompt or a guide, and then all the information will start to flow.
And so now I need to ask, in terms of your friends, family, what was that like growing up? Was there like support for your gifts, or did you just not say anything, or were they like, don't talk about that? What was that like for you? Sorry.
Um, so growing up, it wasn't really spoken about. It wasn't acknowledged really. Um, I remember one time though, and this is a bit weird, um, because my uncle had recently passed, and I was connecting with him, and I was telling my mum. I was only 4 or 5 at the time. I was very very young. I was telling my mum details of his death that I couldn't have known.
Hmm.
There's no way that I could have known that. And so they actually used me at one point. I remember this vividly for a Ouija session. They had me round a table. I was like 4 or 5.
Wow.
Nowadays you would call social services.
Yeah.
Um, but they had me round a table with a glass, trying to connect with him. And I remember that. But other than that, it wasn't really spoken about. I remember that quite vividly, but then it wasn't really spoken about. It wasn't developed. It was
Yep.
just like, oh, she can connect with my brother.
Yep.
Let's see what I want to speak to him. Let's get the kid in and um, stick.
And so
Uh,
now, do you find that you're like kind of surrounding yourself with more like-minded people like yourself, or you have older friends like, that you've known for years, that when you tell them like this is what I'm doing, they're like, what?
so I have a circle of friends who know what I do and get what I do.
Hmm.
Um, Within like my corporate career, when I have spoken about it, you're not taken as seriously.
Right.
You're seen as a little bit weird. Um, so I tended not to talk about it very much.
Hmm.
Within corporate, or within the police. I needed to be professional. But I have a circle of friends that I can really talk about stuff openly with. Yeah.
You know, just an insight to my past experience, I worked for the past like 8 years at a science museum. And when Brandon and I started this podcast, and I would tell people like, oh, I have this tarot podcast, there's still this, there's this like, but you work in a science museum, so you understand like that's not scientific, right? And it's like, no, you're missing, you're just not, you're not getting it. But
Yeah.
what I did find, which I find often, is that the younger people I worked with were a lot more open-minded about it versus the older people, because I think there's such a stigma about it. So they just were not really comfortable listening to me talk about it. That being said, that some of them did ask to come on. So, you know, and have me do readings for them. Okay, so I asked you to bring a deck of cards, and I don't know if you have them readily available, like right in front of you, but can you just tell us what deck you brought?
So the deck that I use at the moment they're called the Faulkner Tarot, and they are a picture deck. So they're modern day pictures.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
So it makes it really relatable to the client because they can look at that and they can see, pictures. They don't have any, like the death card, for example, it's not scary. It's a door that's just opening. So
Yep.
it takes away that scariness that sometimes people feel
Yep.
with tarot. So this is the deck that I'm using at the moment. I am creating my own tarot deck as well at the moment as well. So I'm really excited about that. And they are going to be photographs as well. So they're going to be modern photographs as well.
I love that.
Yeah, I got to break in really quickly because you just melted my entire mind. Because I
Oh,
was like, wow, cool. Because I've thought about maybe creating my own tarot one day because I do art. And then I was like, wow, a tarot with pictures, that's so cool. And then halfway someone there hit me that I love to take pictures of crazy things. And I'm like, oh, I could do that too. And
yeah.
art too. Anyway, thank you, Sheila, for that. But I did have a question before we got into this section of it. It's about the way that you communicate with the guides and with source, I guess you could say. Is this something you just had an ability to do, or did you have to hone it in some way? And if so, what was the way that you did?
Yeah, so it's always been there, but I've honed it. So growing up, I've gone to, or when I had that awakening really of this is what I'm here to do, and, spirit started to speak to me a little bit louder. I started to go to spiritualist churches, groups, circles. I've done course after course after course. I've learned Reiki. I've learned all sorts of different things to expand my knowledge and get that connection crystal clear.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. I feel in my own experience, just in the past, maybe even 6 years, I've gone into this kind of cocoon because in my other life, I was a DJ, basically a wedding DJ. So I could do that on the weekends and then have my weeks free if I wanted to. I was basically at a like college level of just learning all of this and taking. It started off with a lot of religious stuff, then it got into mystical, then some occult knowledge, and then like hermetic stuff. Then I just kept going. But yeah, I feel like what you're saying, and I kind of like did the poor man's route where I just had to do it all with the internet myself, but it's all out there. And that's what I tell people. I'm like, it's all out there for free if you really look for it. It's not as easy to find as it used to be, but it's there, so yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you.
Okay, so you have your deck, and I want to know, is there one card in that deck that you feel like you really resonate with right now?
Yeah, so the card that I resonate with right now is the Queen of Pentacles. So this is me. So the Queen of Pentacles is very business focused. She's traditional. She has high integrity. That's my biggest thing, working with integrity. And she gets things done. She's got high values as well. She wants to get things done. She's very practical, and grounded. So although I may be working with the spiritual realm and doing a lot of spiritual work, I'm very grounded as well. So that is who I resonate with, and that's who I am at the moment. I'm busy, working, creating a business, creating a life for myself and my family.
Yep.
And this is what the Queen of Pentacles is all about.
I love that. And again, so interesting. So our first guest, I asked her the same thing, and she also picked a card in the minor arcana. And when Brandon and I normally pick cards and we do like where we feel like we're at, we've been picking cards in the major arcana, and I'm going through a lot of really big life changes, and I have been. So I feel like it's always it is very reflective of where I am now. Okay, awesome. And in terms of like the decks that you use, do you go off of just like the look of them? Do you get like a feeling of this is the deck I should be working with today, or how does that work?
Yeah, so this is at the moment, this is the only tarot deck that I will use. I
Okay.
use a lot of oracle decks, and I will be guided to which one that I feel drawn to for any particular client. So I'm using one of the oracle decks I'm using at the moment is called the Quantum Oracle deck, which is a beautiful deck, and this is for quantum leaping basically. And this it just, they're so relatable. The cards, again, they're pictures with words on.
Yes.
That's kind of like what I like. It just makes it very relatable, and they've got proper real people in there as well. That one looks like is it Ryan
Brad Pitt,
Gosling? Oh, is it Brad Pitt? No,
maybe. I
right.
don't know.
It's kind of got a Ryan Gosling, I think,
Yeah.
to him.
Ashley would
So,
know better than me. No.
um,
so I love these, yeah.
so I love that. I honestly, I got my first tarot deck at like probably like 14, 15, and these are like before Amazon. So like there was a store that I'd have to go to get it. And I never, until I think we started having guests and they said that they were drawn to specific decks, I never thought about that. I was just like, this is what I have, so this is what I'm going to use. Like there was never a feeling of picking a specific thing based on my like being drawn to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I just recently got my first oracle deck. I'm really, really into it. And the all of the like illustrations are always so beautiful on any deck. So, okay, so now I'm going to ask you to pull a card for Brandon and then pull a card for me, and kind of, or if you have any kind of intuitive insights. She's like, Ashley, ooh.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll use this oracle deck because these are to the point. So I'm just going to pull for Brandon first of all. So I'm just shuffling, and I talk while I shuffle because I'm just getting that connection. And what quite often happens is cards will jump. And did you see that one jump?
Yeah.
Did you see it? Okay. So the card that you have, Brandon, is Present Power, and this is you being in your power basically and taking back your power. You've got people around you you've got these two people around you, but you are the kind of like the one that's controlling everything, and you've got to step into your own power and not rely on the other people around you to prop you up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, a lot of sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
The lion tamer. Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. Is beautiful.
Yeah, that is.
Okay, so I'll pull one for you now, and again what will probably happen is you'll get one jumping out, and I love the way this does this with this deck. It's like Spirit literally grabbing it out of my hand, and we'll just see if one wants to flip out for you. Sometimes I have to shuffle for a bit to get that, and then you've actually got two flipped out there. I don't know if you saw that, but okay, so the first one we've got is Dark Thoughts. So I feel that there's some fear coming up regarding stuff that's going on around you. You're like, oh, what's going on? I don't know if this is good or if this is bad, and it's like you've got all these thoughts going on in your head. And what you need to get to is this place of peace.
that's beautiful.
Beautiful, isn't it? It's a beautiful card. So it's like it's actually okay. It's like getting rid of all these dark thoughts, all these it's like at times you get trapped in it as well. You
Yes.
can see walking into this labyrinth and you get trapped in it. No, you've got to be at this place of peace. And when you're at that place of peace, everything is going to change for you. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. And Brandon can attest to this. The dark thoughts is something I very much struggle with. I'm very, very tough on myself in about everything. And he literally called me out a couple months ago and said, like, you've seen my dog, and she is the light of my life. And he said, if someone talked about her like that, what would you? I was like, I would kill them. And so he's like, you got to stop. Like, you have to, like,
Yeah.
why would you, if you don't want anyone talking about her, like, why do you talk about yourself like that? And not that I'm like overly religious, but when, we just had Lent and Easter, and that's what I gave up for Lent. Again, not that I was like practicing Christian or Catholic, but I said, I'm going to stop talking bad about myself just to give it a shot for 40. And you know what? It became easier to then not think those things, because when you think them, then you're manifesting them.
Absolutely, yeah.
But there still is that like imposter syndrome that comes in, and like similar to you when you were talking about starting your own thing and then not having like that stability and the security, and there is a comfort in that for sure. And a lot of times I feel like I also lack support from my actual like blood family, because they don't really understand what I'm doing. And so their negativity and dark thoughts then start creeping in, because I feel because that those are people that you grow up with, and that they're supposed to be like your family, and if they're like, I'm like, they're thinking that, then what am I doing? So now I'm going off on a tangent. We're having a therapy session here for me now, but definitely I feel as though I have a situation coming up. I'm currently in North Carolina on the East Coast, but I'm moving to the West Coast. And that is where I have found peace. And to be honest, I think it just needs to be a spot where I'm physically away from my family.
Yeah.
I don't mean that in a mean way, but that provides, it's just like another barrier for me of like, to be able to be at a place where I feel good for myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And a lot of the time we have something called the witch wound that comes up, which makes us feel that imposter syndrome. And it's from previous lifetimes, and it can even be ancestral, so it can be down our ancestral line, where we have had lifetimes, or our ancestors have had lifetimes as witches, and we have that fear now, because if you go back to those times, you'd be put to your death for talking about stuff like this.
Yes. Yep.
And so that's something else that I work with as well, because I see it coming up over and over again with spiritual entrepreneurs. They're scared of getting visible. Well, what if I get killed? Well, you're not going to get killed. That's,
right.
But that's the fear that's coming up. It's like, well, I can't be visible because people are going to see me. People are going to know what I do. They're going to tell on me. And there's all this kind of like bitchiness between, you'll be comparing yourself to other entrepreneurs or other business owners, and feeling scared, and oh, they're doing better than me, and it's all from this witch wound that comes up.
And honestly, when you just said that, I'm like, yeah, because you're almost ostracized.
Yep.
Where you're probably not going to be like physically killed, right?
No.
But you could be cast out, and then lack that kind of acceptance into that like mainstream culture, which I think that we had a guest interview yesterday. I was just saying, like, if people were more open-minded, think of all the things that we could actually do versus focusing on being like, well, what is that? I don't believe in that, which is like, that's cool. You don't have to, but I love that. And now, and honestly, that really resonated with me because I'm like, yeah, because that's kind of how I'm feeling, that being ostracized from
Yeah.
my family just because it I'm different. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Hmm.
I feel another way to look at it too is kind of like when they talk, I guess you could say in the Bible or in religious scripts when they talk about the world. And I've talked about this before, how I feel the world is kind of inverted to how humans would live naturally. And not that there's anything wrong with it or there's judgments. Some people just choose to live this way. But if you're conscious of that, then you realize that's how it is. And in the world, people, I would say they depend a lot more on the validation of others. And not that that's a bad thing either, because we do need to connect with each other in a positive way. But I feel like it could be used in a negative way, and that's what happens a lot. And people get this gift and they start to want to connect with people and they start to want to help people, and it looks like it's not something like you were saying in the mainstream, and so people get scared.
Yeah.
And like I said, once you realize that you don't need that outside validation, if you can start to get it from within, and again, it's still good to ask people if you're headed down the right direction. You don't want to be like going too crazy, but sometimes you really do have to trust yourself and your intuition. I mean, it got me this far, so what am I going to say,
Yeah.
Well, and I also feel like then when you do trust yourself, you find that there is a community that isn't going to kind of make you feel like you're different, or they're going to be very open-minded and be like, yeah, I want to know more about that. Case in
Yeah.
point, what's happening right
Yeah.
now, this
Yeah.
podcast.
At the beginning, it could be tough though. So if you're someone who's listening and this is happening to you, there's people out there, but you just got to stick with what you know is true sometimes. And that's, things burn away. It's like the phoenix coming through the fire. So you got to let it burn sometimes.
And one positive thing of, lockdowns and things like that is that I feel like it's really made people realize that you don't need to be in the same physical location as other people to be able to connect with them, because you might find that your community might not be where you're physically located, and it can be worldwide, right? And there's still that connection, right? Like Zoom has become like a verb now. Like it's just part of our lives.
Yeah, and to add to that, which is great because a lot of people, there is some negative connotations to that, but I think it helps because if you can make yourself a better person and work on yourself with other people on Zoom, and then the people around you who you interact physically with, you're going to bring them up to that vibration also, or just up a little bit, because a rising tide will
Exactly.
bring all ships up. So yeah, it's just a balance though, obviously. So everyone who's listening, get out and talk to some people too. Don't just get on the screen. I know I look great and you want to listen to my voice. Go outside.
All right, Sheila, I am so happy that you were able to be here. I promise you, we're gonna keep it close to an hour, so we're not gonna keep you for your whole day. If people want to get in contact with you, what is the best way to do that?
So the best way to do that would be either through Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
So looking me up on Facebook. I'm just Sheila Kadeer. There's only one of me in the world, so I'm quite easy to find.
Nice.
Or through my website, which is www.sheilakadeer.com. It's pretty simple to get.
And how do you spell that for everybody?
So it's SHEILAKADEER.
Awesome. And it looks like we might have a few minutes. I wanted to ask you quickly about the other tarot with the pictures. Do you mind pulling a card from that really quick just to kind of give us a reading? Because this idea is starting to blow my mind, because when I'm thinking to myself, I've already done this where I've taken pictures and then I've taken that picture and I've made some art with it. So I'm like,
I was just going to say that, Brandon. I was just going to say that.
You could have two decks right next to each other. I mean, yeah, so.
Yeah, I mean, I have also created a oracle deck. That was my first attempt at this, which is pictures, and then I've got graphics overlaid on them as well.
That's
So I've
really
always,
smart.
and again, it's normal everyday pictures with
I do that.
overlaid.
I've done that with, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I've done that with stuff in podcasts that I've done previously. I've taken my own pictures and I put stuff over at graphics and done that. And I do that for this podcast. If you look, I make all the artwork for that too. I mean, I don't actually draw the pictures, but I'll take the pictures and make a little pic art and stuff. Yeah. So I would definitely be into this.
Okay, right. So the card that I have for you is the Emperor. So this is all about the masculine energy. It's stability, security, And this is where you're at the moment, I feel. So it's like you're getting all your structures in place. So you're having to do all the masculine things, um, in terms of business, in terms of flow. It's like bringing that money in. So it's quite a strong, powerful card. So again, it's one of the major arcana there,
Mhm.
and it's all about getting those structures in place. So that's where I feel that you're at the moment. And I'm going to pull a card for Ashley now as well. So again, these ones don't tend to fly out as much
Mm-hmm.
because they're so old and well used
Yes.
that they just don't. Okay, so I have to just... And the card that you have is the Three of Swords, which is some sadness there. It's like you've got to let go of something. It's like you're holding on to something. And just as I tune into it, it's something from the past that you need to let go of. Okay? Does that make sense?
It does. And Sheila, that consistently seems to be coming up in all of the readings for the things that
Let it
people
go.
have mentioned.
Let it go.
It just and I feel like I say this in every time, but it's like, I feel like I'm really trying. But going back to that like forgiveness part of it, that acceptance part of it, like that's hard for me.
Yeah.
Because I expect so much from myself.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes just the acceptance is what we need rather than the forgiveness.
Yeah. Yeah. And then going back to what I was saying about my family, it's kind of like you get a scab and they're the ones that are like picking it off, And so it just like reopens that wound. It has to do with me getting a divorce. That's what I think it is.
Okay.
And then kind of the crumbling of the life that I had established in that relationship. That's how I'm interpreting that card. So
that there's an element of grieving for that old life, but it's like moving now into the new because there's opportunities there for you, new opportunities.
Yes. Trying, Sheila. I'm really trying. I think that I'm further along than I was, a month, 2 months ago. And like I think this physical space is going to be, the physical distance will be very good for me.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll post your Facebook. When we'll tag you in our Facebook post, and then we'll put up your website when we post the podcast. But thank you so much for being here and taking the time and having this work in terms of time zones and everything like that. Super happy that you're here, and I definitely am going to pick your brain a little bit more once we stop recording. But thank you again, and everyone, reach out to Sheila if you're feeling as though you need some spiritual guidance in starting your spiritual business. Most, I think, the people that listen to us probably are going down that route anyway. So, Brandon, do you have anything else you want to say?
Thank you, Ashley. And I just want to say thank you to Sheila. It's funny because every time we do these, it's just like another level of mind blowingness. I like to call it gravy, that I just get this gravy. So thank you so much. And now I could share with the world the knowledge you've shared with me now has become my wisdom. And I want to thank you. And also for Ashley, I'd like to quote Yoda and just say, do or do not, there is no try. All right, everybody. This has been another episode of the Terrible Podcast. Make sure you go to terrible.com, TAROTBULL.com for everything terrible related. And Ashley, what do we say every week? Stay terrible.